Welcome to episode 83 of Meet the GIMP. My name is Rolf Steinort and I'm recording this in Bremen, northern Germany. Imagine some guy standing in front of an enlargement of a photography. Let's say the time is mid-70s. The image is enlarged to 40 centimeters height, and the guys are standing in front of it and say, nice image, but haven't you some grain there? And really, if you look exactly at the image, you see grain. Now let's play this scene, 2009. Well, you would see a black and white image made with a digital camera and enlarged, and let's say it's a really good camera, something with a full frame sensor or so, and these guys would stand before this image and say, oh, well done, but I miss the grain. So this has changed. In the times when I was in the darkroom, grain was to be avoided. And if it couldn't be avoided, it had to be reduced. Too much grain. No, that's not an option. And today, if we do black and white photography with digital images, people miss the grain, and there are ways to add grain to them. And I think sometimes it's really good. Let's have a quick look at Wikipedia about film grain. Wikipedia says that this is the random optical texture of processed photographic film due to the presence of small grains of metallic silver. If we want to have realistic grain, we have first to look at where in an image grain happens and where not. And for that I have two images. This one here is one I made in the 70s, and this one here is from the 20s of the last century. Let's start with this one here, because here the grain is, I think, a little bit more prominent than the other image. When I zoom into this image, you see here the grain. This is grain, a pattern of, you see a lot of tiny dots. They are irregular in form and distribution, and you see them in the mid-tones a lot, and not so much in the dark areas here. And also not so much in the bright areas. So this grain is mostly in the mid-tones. We have to keep that in mind. And it is irregular. So let's go back to the other image and look at the details here. This is a really high-resolution scan of one of the midtone areas, from here to here about a centimeter. And you see here the grain is, well, it's a little bit washed out and not so prominent as real little dots as it was in the old image. This is due to advancement of film technology. I used film made in the GDR. It was really cheap and on the technical standards of, let's say, the 50s or 60s. And the more modern Ilford or Aqua films gave much better images. But, well, film was an expensive resource, and so we bought the stuff cheap from friends in the GDR. Adding grain to a digital image is not terribly difficult. You just put a grain layer over it and combine it with, for example, overlay mode, and you're done. But getting the grain is a bit of a problem. And let's start with realistic photographic grain. And I want to steal some grain from this image here. And so I select here a square. Well, it's still there. I select a square here from this area. Let's take this area here. There are two faults in here, but I think it should work out. I go to Edit, Copy, and Edit, Paste as New Image. And here we have our grain. Perhaps I should clone out this here. Let's do this. Let's do this with the healing brush. I select a soft brush, take with Control my starting point from here and go to here. Now it's gone, and the same here. Because this will be visible, this here is 500 pixels around, and if we have such stuff in there and we tile this later on, then we get a repetitive pattern, and that would be not so nice. So I want to get rid of any color any image information here, so I double this layer, and now I blur this layer. I go to Filters and Blur, Gaussian Blur. And here I choose a value where the grain is gone, but the image information is still there, and I think this would be a good value here. Now the grain is gone, but this stuff from the paint is still there. Now I set this layer to the layer mode, which has the name Grain Extract. Click, and here we have the grain, our film grain. And if we look with a high magnification into it, it could be convincing. Now I flatten this image by Layer, Merge Down, and save it as Grain 1. Oh, I forgot something. If I use this image repeatedly as tiles over another image, I will get seams here. And for that we have a filter. Go to Filter. Where was it now? Here. Go to Filters, Map, and Make Seamless. And now the borders of this image have changed a little bit so that we can tile it without an obvious seam. So now I save it as real film grain.png. Another way of adding grain is simulated grain. This has the advantage of being very flexible, and you can adjust it to the stuff you want to have. I found this tutorial here on gimpguru.org, a site made by Eric Jeschke, and well, I think it's quite outdated and not in maintenance anymore. You see here, he has done something with grain, without and with added grain, and I'll show you how he has done it. Just to show you how GIMP has looked some time ago, this is GIMP 1.9 something or so. before the GIMP 2.0 release. I have used this also. So let's do it in this way. The first thing is we need a layer filled with neutral gray. So I go here to value and set this to 50. And I have my neutral gray. Now I go to filters, noise, and HSV noise. This doesn't work. Well, okay, here I have a grayscale image. Don't know how this has happened, but go to edit, go to image, mode, RGB. And now I go again to filters, noise, HSV noise. Here we have 4 values: holdness, hue, saturation, and value. When I pull up the saturation, you see here colored dots. So I don't want to have color in here, so I put saturation to 0 and hue also to 0, because hue has no function here. But with value and holdness, I can play a bit. Let's put value up. You see here we have a lot of grain, and now I can add holdness and get finer grain with an enlarged with a larger value, or coarser grain with a lower value. So let's look for something convincing. I think this is quite good. Let's select this. And now, when we look at this doesn't look really convincing, doesn't it? Well, we have to add some blur. I go to filters and Gaussian blur, and this is way too much. Let's say a blur value of 2. This looks quite nice here. This looks quite convincing, I think. Let's make this tileable too. Filters, map, and make seamless. The advantage of this approach is that you can adjust the graininess of your image in a way that you want to have it. Let's try this effect with this image. When I zoom into this image, you see it has its own grain problem, or it has its grain. I think this can really work as grain. This is simply sensor noise. This was shot with ISO 1250, and that's quite high. I never shot, well, I once shot film with 1600 ASA, 400 ASA film pushed up to that, and that was grainy, as if it was made out of stones or so. But this is terrific compared to film. But I want to make this image into an image sized for the web, and for that I have to resize this image. Let's do this. Image, scale image, and I want a height of, let's say, 500. Well, with 500 I can't see if my tiles work. Let's say 600. And now you see all my fine grain, here my sensor noise, is gone, because all this information here is lost, and this downsizing kills all the noise in the image. Let me start with the artificial grain. I need to enlarge this here because my image is larger than this here. I have here 500 pixels and my image is 600 pixels. So I go to Filters, Map, Tile. And then I get a dialog where I can set the new dimensions of this image. And here I can say 700. Click, and I get a new image. Let me close this here. I get a new image, 700 by 700 pixels, with my grain in it. And you see here, we should have here a seam, but I can't see any seam there. It looks quite nice. So let's just pull this on top of this and set the layer mode to overlay. And here we have grain. Let's zoom into this 100%, and you see we have grain here. Let's compare with the real grain, the real film grain, and I'll do the same as just before. Open the file, check if it fits. This doesn't fit too. I go to Filters, Map, Tile, say 700, create a new image, okay, close this one, select this one. Oh, by the way, we can now here compare the two grains, and you see this is a little bit more defined. Perhaps I have blurred this too much. And I pull this on top of this here, set the layer mode. Well, let's set the name first here. This is real. This is synthetic. And switch this off. Get this one down and set the layer mode to overlay. And here we have grain 2. But this doesn't look right. I switch this on here. This is okay. It's a little bit grainy, but this is really dark here. This is also grainy, but it doesn't look right. Because the grain is overall. You see grain here, grain here. You don't see grain in the dark parts. That's okay. But you see grain also here. So we need a layer mask. A layer mask to hide the grain in the dark and in the bright parts. And this can be done with a grayscale copy of our image. So I select the image, select everything in the image with Ctrl A, and copy it, Ctrl C. And now I add a layer mask, white, doesn't matter. I paste my selection with Ctrl V, and I anchor it, the floating layer, on my layer. This has helped a little bit perhaps in the dark parts, but the white parts are bad as before. It's worse now because we have less grain here, where we expect a maximum of grain, and more grain, or the same grain as before, here in this area. This is because this layer mask, let me show you the layer mask. Well, you see not much has changed now. This layer mask reveals the layer in the bright parts and hides it in the dark parts. And so we have to change this here. We have to make the bright parts dark, the dark parts shall be dark, and the midtones shall be bright. Well, this is easy with the Curves tool. Just click on it, pull this into the recording window, pull this down, and everything gets black. And now I pull the midtones up. We will have grain here where it's bright. And now I can say, okay, I want to have this a little bit wider here. And I can play with these curves. The brighter, the more grain. The blacker, the less grain. Let's look into this problematic zone there where we had too much grain. Let's go down with the grain there. I think this could be quite interesting this way here. Now I switch off the visibility of the layer mask, and you see we have grain here and less grain here. Perhaps a little bit too less in this area, but I think it's okay. Now I just copy this layer mask and I add a layer mask here. And paste this layer mask. Now we can compare this one here, the real one, or this one, the synthetic. I think in this case here the real grain wins, but I think with different values we can get a more convincing, even more convincing noise here. What we can do else is change the layer mode, for example to hard light. This exaggerates this really. We can go down with the opacity and play a little around with this. We can use also soft light, but soft light is basically the same or exactly the same as overlay. We can use grain merge, which is exactly for this purpose. Merge a grain and an image. You see, now the effect is really strong, and we can go down with the opacity a bit here. Well, I just found out that I have killed my file with the goodbye. Oh, it's not so bad. Now the phone is ringing. I just noticed that I have lost the last part of my recording. Well, it was only the goodbye, and I can say this here now. I have also some news. A big thank you in direction of Denmark. There came 1,000 Danish crowns into the pot, into the hat of Meet the Gimp.
Photocastnetwork.com, your photography resource in the potosphere. Photocastnetwork.com